Pika, I told you, don't touch my things. Like my knickknacks and stuff. That was not a Rubik's Cube. Now we got pieces of Squirtle everywhere. Ugh, it's going to take us days to clean this up. Hey, everyone. How you doing? We have come back for the 31 days of Halloween. Indeed. Yeah, is that playing? I don't know. I got it on a slower speed. Let's see. Here we go, right? Yeah. What are you doing back there? I'm playing the trailer for Hellraiser. That's our movie today, 1987's Hellraiser. I have seen the future of horror, and his name is Clive Barker. That's a quote by Stephen King. I grew up watching and reading Stephen King novels and watching his movies. So these words were like Moses getting the burning bush to me. It is the 31 days of Halloween. We are doing 31 horror movies in the month of October leading up to Halloween. And we are doing today Creature Double Feature. That's right. We're doing two movies. We're doing a double feature. Creature Double Feature. I'm from Boston. Okay? And we had a TV show on Saturday afternoons on WLVI TV, Channel 56, on the UHF station, on the UHF dial. And it was part and parcel of my childhood experience growing up. It started after the Saturday morning cartoons ended. And you could always go there and find Hammer movies, American International movies, and kaiju movies. That was where I first saw Dracula, where I first saw any kind of vampire or monster. And it was the first place I saw Rodan, Ghidorah, Mothra, and Gojira. Yeah, Godzilla. And especially my favorite was Mechagodzilla. And it would show sci-fi, horror movies, macabre stuff. Sometimes it had a movie host who is that TV movie host where like they're in makeup and they have all this, trappings of a dungeon in the background, or even some cast members. It's kind of why Mystery Science Theater 3000 was so well. It really played upon the whole host of the show thing. The Mads being kind of like the hosts of a Creature Double Feature, while Joel and the Bots were us, in a way. But Creature Double Feature was a syndicated horror show broadcast in the Boston and Philadelphia area during the 1960s, 70s, and 1980s. It also aired under the names like Sci-Fi Flicks and Creature Feature. Yeah, because when they only showed one movie, it was Creature Feature. When they showed two movies, you got it. It was Creature Double Feature. Usually started at noon, and the second movie started at 2. And that would, fill up your afternoon of, until it's time to watch like reruns of Space 1999 or Fall Guy or whatever it was that they were in rerun on 56 at the time. Yeah, and this Creature Double Feature based its airing 2 movies during a 3-hour time slot. Yeah, so it was close. The movies broadcast were taken from Universal horror movies of the 1930s to 1950s, the Hammer Studios and American International Pictures of the 1950s, Roger Corman's horror movies of the 1960s, and Studio Toho's giant monster, known in Japanese as either kaiju or tokusatsu, movies of the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Yeah, chock full of like kids in shorts going to Gojira. I love that movie. I love those movies. In Boston, beginning in 1972, a station in the Kaiser Broadcasting, later Field Communications chain, KBG, Channel 56, and it became WLVI after Boston Globe sold their shares back to Kaiser in 1975. Interesting, because on Morrissey Boulevard in Dorchester, driving past BC, Boston College High School, and driving up to UMass Boston there, and running parallel to the 93 Expressway. Well, you would have the old Boston Globe printing facility. There used to be their offices were there, and right next door was Channel 56. It was in their broadcast studio. I went to a summer school one time at BC High, and we just walked in there one day. It's like, hey, can we look around? And they gave us it was like 6 of us, and they gave us, it was my idea too. I was pretty brash. I had these great ideas. Hey, we're walking, we were out of school, walking towards the station. We always walked past W56, TV 56. So I was like, hey, let's go in. Let's see. And they gave us a quick 10-minute tour. We got to see the news desks. Got to see the TV that was built into the Formica table that the newsreaders are looking at as well. And it was really fun. They did not have the Creature double feature set. No, I don't recall that. But we're doing 2 movies today. We're doing a Creature double feature. We're doing Hellraiser and Hellraiser 2. Hellbound. Hellraiser 2. Put that in its correct order. Let's dial up another trailer. Let's look at the preview here. Yes, New World Cinema. I mean, how many of my videos as a kid started? So we have the box here. And remember, in the early 80s, too, we had a puzzle box sensation called the Rubik's Cube. And that actually went on for the better part of the decade. So this is 1987. These were all practical special effects. And they pushed the envelope. It was a new time of body horror, probably in the David Cronenberg vein, but we got movies such as The Reanimator or From Beyond, and they had the grotesque body horror and showed mutations. And this in particular is a really interesting story, and we've talked about it before when it comes to gay coding and queer theory, but also the sexuality involved, not just in vampire movies, but most specifically shown in this movie. Because in horror movies, tomorrow we're doing a comedy that is based upon the slasher movies of the 80s. It's 2004's Broken Lizard's Club Dread, and it's a pretty darn good horror movie. Why? Because it's a parody of one, but it follows all the rules, especially with those rules that were kind of mentioned way back in Cabin in the Woods. The jocks, the virgin, the whore, the fool, and all these different archetypes, and which ones die in which order. And so it pays attention to the rules. So, but real quick, because most of this is about where my love of horror movies started, and it was Creature double feature, and so they started showing the films at so WLVI, after Boston Globe sold their shares back, let's come full circle, Saul. In 1975, when I became cognizant and basically about an inch away from that television, aired its collection of Godzilla movies, one per week at 4 p.m. on Saturday under the title The 4 O'Clock Movie. They cycled through their collection twice, noting that the broadcasts were especially popular with youngsters. So they started showing the films at midnight. I remember this, calling it Creature Features. The ratings became so popular that the show was moved to noon to increase its ratings. However, it was in direct competition with Channel 5's Candlepin Bowling and was moved to the 2 p.m. time slot. Its popularity grew, and they tweaked the title to Creature Double Feature and changed its start time to 1 p.m. The show quickly became a staple of the station's Saturday programming during the 1970s and early 1980s. Although the exact date of the final show is currently unknown, it seems to have petered out sometime in 1983 and was replaced with WLVI's TV's Martial Arts Theater, showing cheap English-dubbed Hong Kong martial art movies as a replacement. I remember that because I remember seeing tons and tons of Hong Kong martial arts movies, bad ones where it's all dance moves and then leaping in the air, stepping on someone's chest, and they spurt out this red liquid that looks like blood, and they go, and it's a geyser, man. Yeah, that's like every Hong Kong martial art movies I've ever saw on that station. as a kid. To this day, WLVI staffers report they still receive more email and phone calls about Creature Double Feature than anything else. In 2006, Channel 56 Steve Ratner was quoted in the Boston Globe saying, quote, "I'm amazed at the following the show continues to have. It's just insane how many people come up to us and ask us after the Creature Double Feature. Every day we get email from people all over the country." Yeah, I mean, and this is our Creature Double Feature today. It's Hellraiser, written and directed by Clive Barker. I've seen The Future of Horror, and it's Clive Barker, Stephen King. So I went out and I got the Books of Blood. All 3 volumes I could only get at the time. I read The Hellbound Heart. I read probably the most disturbing and indelible short horror story I've ever read in my life. It's called The Confession of a Shroud. Actually, literally, the Confessions of a Pornographer's Shroud, where the accountant of the mafia was set up as the dupe, as the fall guy, and for the criminal activities, and I think he was about to testify against the mafia, and so he's killed by the mafia in extremely slow torture. And so his shroud over his corpse. And what the mafia did was they maligned him after death and said he was in charge of a pornography operation. So the wife and children are disgraced. And it's like, so of course this guy's spirit can't be sound and wanted vengeance. And so the shroud that was overlaid over his corpse in the coroner's office is imbued with his spirit. And he goes and has his revenge. It's a really, really sick, ghoulish, gruesome, revenge-driven, torturous, heebie-jeebies giving short story. But Stephen King was right. I went on to read The Great Horror Show. Kind of petered out on that, too. But I read a lot of horror books growing up. Stephen King and Clive Barker. Now, Clive Barker in these Books of Blood also had a short story called Rawhead Rex. And that was made into a really klutzy but charming horror movie. And Clive Barker was so disappointed with this movie that he went on to direct and write Hellraiser. And I saw this at the movie theater. It's rated R. It's pretty darn gross. I was about 14 when it came out. I can see rated R movies. And I watched it endlessly. I rented it endlessly because there was nothing else in the world like this, special effects wise. And its follow-up, just the next year, it was followed up, and it was so quick to have a sequel, like boom, like, you know, I'm a Star Wars fan. I'm used to 3 years for sequels. I'm a Star Trek fan. We're used to like a couple of years in between. No, this didn't miss a beat. Hellraiser 2 came out the next year, and let's maybe we should show the Hellraiser trailer. There's been a remake on Hulu, and there was a hubbub about the lead big bad. They're called the Xenobites. They're these beings. That's Pinhead. That is the big bad of Hellraiser. Let's put on the original trailer. We have it on slow speed anyway, so hopefully we won't get any strikes or anything. But here's the big thing I wanted to mention about I want to come full circle to coding in this. We mentioned in England a couple of episodes ago in one of the Hammer horror movies that in 1967 homosexuality between men was decriminalized in the UK. All right, so this is by 1987, so that's only 20 years later. This guy, Clive Barker, who grew up a gay man in Britain in that time, had to, is part of that culture and had to deal with all the luggage that came with trying to be gay in Britain, either in or out of the closet, in that time during the 70s and early 80s. It's best that I just read this from the wiki. This is Clive Barker's actual background. Clive Barker worked as a hustler in the 1970s as a male prostitute. Yeah, and he was gay. So he was a gay male prostitute. And his experiences made him want to tell a story about good and evil in which sexuality was the connective tissue. The look of the Xenobites was inspired by S&M clubs, sadism and masochism, and such as an underground club called Cell Block 23 in New York, where people were getting pierced for fun. When he directed and wrote the film adaptation, Barker considered naming the film Sadomasochists from Hell. Well, it's a good thing he settled on Hellraiser, and it inspired about at least 8 or 9 movies in this. From this makes a continuity and starts a universe, and then there's been deviations from that. There's been a modern, there's a reboot over at Hulu right now, and I hear it's pretty damn good. I heard it's hey, if it has a physical media release, I will check it out. I really will. Actually, one of my good friends, Karen Black, she was quizzing me on current stuff, and there was a recent British 3-hour Netflix presentation. It was shown on Netflix. I don't have Netflix, won't watch it. That's my thing. But it was a Dracula story. It was 3 hours, and it has Morfydd Clark as Mina Murray, or Mina Harker. I don't know which one yet. I'm going to find out, though, because you know I'm a sucker for any adaptation of Bram Stoker's Dracula. I will watch a 3-hour TV adaptation of Dracula. Sure, why not? I'm into that. I'm into that. So bring it. If there's a DVD or Blu-ray of this modern, recently made Dracula adaptation, I'm all in. I'll watch. Yeah, I'm looking forward to checking that out. Hellraiser 2 is really interesting as well. So a lot of it has a subtext and theme of being an ingenue or a new person in a new culture. And so you have Christy, who's basically our vehicle. And we also have even the bad guys of Julia and Frank being our vehicle into a world, an underworld, where there are rules, where there are roles, and where there's an exchange of pleasure and pain. This is like really, there's a lot to unpack here. So my thing was, I see Christy is basically Clive Barker. We would call that today a self-insert, but I don't mean that with any of its negative luggage. I mean this basically as Christy's our main hero or heroine of this tale. Also, as she is in the second movie as well. The second movie is all about girl power. Seriously, for 1988, I mean, those didn't exist in 1988, right? Only like Strong Women came about in 2015, 16. I'm being facetious. But yes, I was surprised. Hellbound Hellraiser 2 is really what we would call progressive. Yeah, it's about, and that's steeping with girl power. Seriously. But getting back to the point, yeah, Christy is Clive, and Clive, being a young person and having to be, he's now in this new culture and experiencing and seeing things, and it's scary and it's titillating at the same time. I see this thing is a huge allegory for Clive Barker's, personal experience of coming out. That's what I think. I mean, there's gay coding everywhere in older movies. Seriously, it wasn't like today. Today's everything's on the nose, and everything is leading with our identities and or even our mental illnesses or where we're coming from culturally. Yet there was once a time where there were interesting ideas to unpack and to figure out. And I had an aha moment after watching this countless times over the years since it came out 35 years ago. I mean, I've been watching this movie, these 2 movies. I've watched Hellraiser 3 a couple of times. It's not my favorite, but I'm going to get to it. I was going to do all 3 of them, but I decided on Club Dread instead because there's a thing about, there was actually a listing on the 31 Days Challenge of a comedy horror movie. There's Young Frankenstein. There's a whole host of them. Dracula Dead and Loving It, which I should make as part of my Dracula collection anyway. but I chose Broken Lizards Club Dread, and yeah, and yeah, I'll throw on the Hulu trailer. Why not? Hopefully that won't give us anything. But it's grotesque special effects, lots of blood, lots of muscle, lots of being exposed, lots of raw nerves, lots of body parts, lots of being reduced to your meat. I mean, there is just so much to unpack here. Wow, and yeah, I don't want to go on too long, but we are talking about a creature double feature. We're talking about 2 movies here. We're talking with Hellraiser and Hellbound. Hellraiser 2, 1987 and 1988. No CGI special effects. All practical rubber liquids shot with cameras, actual light bouncing off of actual subjects. And there is just a visual tactility to this. This is horrific. This movie will challenge you. It should challenge you. And nothing is on the nose. There are levels to inspect and to interpret. Yeah, these movies hold up, and I will eventually get to the other 6 movies in my collection. I have 8 of these Hellraiser movies. Apparently Henry Cavill is in Hellraiser 9. I didn't know. And then there's all this new Hellraiser too coming out. So, but yeah, happy Creature Double Feature. It's been Creature Double Feature Day. This has been the 23rd day of Halloween, and we're doing the 31 days of Halloween. We're watching horror movies every day in the month of October, and hashtag 31 days of Halloween. Check us out on Twitter. Use us for suggestions for your list, and put your suggestions in the comments. Keep the conversation going. And it was so really awesome to talk about Creature Double Feature. I didn't know that was run in Philly as well. That's great. So we've shared this experience with another city, and yeah, that was a huge part of me growing up, and so glad I got to talk to you about it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Don't open up boxes that lead to doors that you might not want to consent to. Yeah, I mean, there's so much to unpack in this movie. It really is. Thank you so much for tuning in. I have a playlist, 31 Days of Halloween, right here. Check out the other episodes. Like and subscribe. I would love to earn your subscription. We make daily content here. So thank you so much. God bless. Namaste. Good luck. And we will see you again tomorrow. Happy Halloween, huh? Keep watching those horror movies.